Hello, everybody. We're welcome to Horses and Humans Research Foundation webinar series. You're in for a treat tonight. We have Dr. Mike Tomlinson, and he has been in the field with horse and human partnership for the past 50 years. He's a veterinarian by, I guess I want to say, by trade or education, but he's also an entrepreneur. If any of you have ever heard of SmartPack, no, he started that company, and Game Ready. He's been involved with HHRF on the board, been past president, and now he's a great advisor with us. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
There we go. Now I'm trying to share my screen. I hope you can see it now.
Yep, you are sharing and good to go.
Good. So as Pebbles and I were just talking, there are probably 1,000 different things we could talk about tonight, but we're going to try and limit it to the horse-human partnership, how it relates to equine assisted services, and the social license to operate. I hope everybody has heard of the social license to operate already, but just in case, well, one housekeeping thing first. If you want to ask a question, please put it in the chat. And let's see, Kathy is going to watch the chat and she will be able to interrupt at any time. I'd prefer not to take them all at the end, but we will have quite a bit of time at the end for questions and discussion when we'll open it up so everybody can hear and talk. So please go ahead and ask your questions anytime. Are there any questions before we even begin? Okay. Then the first thing is, what is social license to operate? We used to think what we did was our business. Nobody can make me change. Nobody can tell me what to do, especially somebody that doesn't know anything about horses. How can somebody who's not a horse person tell me what to do? What right do they have to tell me what to do when I'm working with horses? The reality is that public does not have the right to tell you how to run your business. But they do have the right to place restrictions on what you do and how you do it in their jurisdiction. And we'll kind of go through that this evening. The concept of social license to operate is relevant to horses, especially. There is a lot of emotion around horses. People who have never even seen one in person feel that they know what they want and how they feel. So the social license to operate is an intangible, implicit agreement between the public and an industry or group. That is a lot of words, but we'll explain it further. If an industry has an implicit social license to operate, such as baseball, everybody says baseball is a good thing. The government doesn't regulate baseball at all. They let somebody else regulate it. They tried to stay out of it. But if the government feels that it needs to be regulated, such as Schedule I drugs, the government regulates medications more than you would ever believe. So if they feel there is a problem, the government will regulate it. And if they don't, they stay away. social license to operate is a phrase that truly means political and public acceptance and trust. If we as an industry are trusted and accepted, and everybody generally feels that we have the horse's best interest at heart, everything will be fine. People who know little to nothing about horses have the power to determine what is and what is not acceptable. That can have a big impact on everything equestrian. For example, the city of Berkeley, California, the city council there in January, so last month, narrowly defeated a measure that would have prohibited horses from being in their stalls more than 14 hours a day. Sounds like a good idea, sounds reasonable. Horses love being in pasture. So the unknowing and some of the knowing, we're trying to get this passed. What most people in Berkeley did not realize is that the stables for Golden Gate Fields, the raceway in San Francisco, the stables are within the city limits of Berkeley. So if that measure passed last month, that would be the last day for Golden Gate Fields. There would be no more horse racing in Northern California at all. So the unintended or possibly intended consequences of this are very far-reaching. So one of my questions to myself was, why are people listening to this webcast tonight? Is everyone here to see how they can help improve the public acceptance and trust of equestrianism worldwide? Believe me, that is what I thought when I gave this talk in Sydney last summer. There were almost 200 people on it. And these were some big names. And I thought every one of them wanted to improve the social license to operate for horses. From the questions, about halfway through the presentation, I realized that nearly all of them were there simply to see how social license to operate was going to change their life. They only wanted to know, what can I do to prevent this? I don't want to change. They weren't there to help. They were there to see how they can stop it. We are not going to stop this. This is not something that we can control. I do want to specifically discuss how social license to operate is currently affecting equine assisted services and how it's going to in the near future. But before we understand social license to operate, we must understand the horse. Let me give just a few basic givens. I think this is going to be review for most everybody on this talk. In order to understand the horse, you have to understand their origin, that they're a forager, they're gregarious, they're some of the most perceptive and sensitive, they're a flight animal, inquisitive, they get bored easily, they speak very quietly, they have discrete sleep needs, and safety and consistency is important for them. So let's go through those real quick. There's a lot of debate as to where you put the stake in the ground for the origin of horses, but typically everybody agrees that horses were somewhere between 250 and 450 pounds before man started selectively breeding them to make them larger. Remember, horses did not evolve to be larger. Horses were bred to be larger. So that's a big difference. As soon as the horses get loose and become feral, they start getting smaller and smaller. So horses are innately a smaller animal than the horses we are currently working on. The horse's digestive tract is more like a cow's than a dog. Dogs can go days without eating, horses cannot. It requires a constant source of high fiber roughage flowing through it every day. Any interruption in the flow or consistency of the forage often disrupts the bacteria and results in significant gastrointestinal discomfort. The word we usually use for that is colic, and colic remains the #1 cause of death in horses today. Horses are intended to have their head down, walking forward up to 20 hours a day. That is what they do for a living, is eat. They don't turn around and look where they've been. They're looking ahead. They don't eat the tallest grass in the pasture. Does anybody know why they don't eat the tallest grass in the pasture?
They stale.
Was it, Dave? You're not on mute. I could actually hear you, Octavia.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding. No.
Because they lift their tails.
Yeah. Exactly.
I shall mute now.
Yeah. The tallest grass is where the horse ahead of them pooped last time, and it could have worms or other things in it that the horse shouldn't eat, so they don't eat tall grass. It looks like the most luscious to you and me, but the reason it's most luscious is it's been fertilized. But why I bring this up is that horses need to have motion to keep their gut going. Horses need to eat, not with meals. You can feed your dog once a day and they're perfectly fine, but if you feed a horse once a day, most of them will colic very soon. So horses need to have constant fiber going through. Horses are gregarious. We know they're prey. Horses eat, they're a herbivore. They do not eat other animals. They are not a predator. They are simply feed for the predators. There is safety in numbers. If everybody in the herd is looking out, it's more likely that the predator will be seen before anybody gets hurt. The entire herd tries to stay alert, but when you are in the middle of the herd, you can relax for a moment. If you are all by yourself, you must remain vigilant 100% of the time. There's nothing wrong with a little stress, but when you have constant stress, that is deleterious for your health. When you're in a herd of trusted mates, a horse can let down their hair and relax. The ability to relax is essential for well-being. Horses may have the exact same 5 senses we do, but theirs are significantly more sensitive. Horses may not see color as well as we do, but they can see motion so far away that we can't see it except through a telescope. Their hearing is better than ours, but the biggest thing is that they can flick their ears around and determine exact direction the sound's coming from faster than you and me. Their skin is more sensitive, or not more, their skin is as sensitive as the tips of our fingers. All of it. It's not like us where, you know, you scratch somebody's back and it's not real sensitive, but their fingers are. Horses are sensitive everywhere. They have an awful lot of nerve endings. Horses develop this way because they are prey. They have to be able to see motion miles away. They have to be able to tell what direction the predator is coming from. The reason why horses are different than any other well, we'll get into this on the next slide, but the ability to sense emotions in others is legendary. They know your feelings more accurately than you do, because it meant whether they lived or died to be able to tell how you are feeling. Horses are the only domesticated animal that has flight as their primary defense. You know, the first thing you think is, oh, well, cows too. No. When a predator comes to a group of cows, they kind of form a circle and put their backs out towards them. That's why cows have very thick hide, whereas horses is very thin comparatively. That's why cows have an extremely good immune system. Horses, when we do surgery on their belly in a positive pressure room with antibiotics, with everything else, they still die from infection. Horses have a horrible immune system. And the reason is, if a big cat caught a cow, the cat may slice open the cow's belly, but the cow still survives. They needed it. Horses, if a cat comes, they're in the next county. If a cat ever catches a horse, the horse just dies. They don't need an immune system. There's no reason for it. They didn't develop it. The thing is that if you run first and ask questions later, if you did that all day long from the same thing, you would quickly become very skinny because you spent all your time running. You might have hurt your leg while you're running, and you've wasted a lot of energy. Horses habituate or learn faster than just about any other domestic animal when it comes to what is safe and what is not safe. So they learn very quickly what is annoying and what is dangerous. This need for constant learning is one thing that comes from being a flight animal. It also means, because they're constantly checking out their environment, horses are very inquisitive. They're not as inquisitive as a cat that's a predator that's cooped up in a house all day, but they are more inquisitive than most species. Horses need mental stimulation to prevent boredom. Boredom leads to vices such as weaving, stall pacing, etc. And those cause innumerable health problems for horses. The only thing worse for a horse than being totally bored is constant anxiety, but neither extreme is good. Horses are very soft speakers. And what I mean by that is, certainly when a predator is coming, they are loud and snort and roar and do all sorts of things. But from one horse to another, they're virtually silent. It's done so that the predator cannot see how they are communicating. It's like a school of fish. Everybody turns left all at once. Did you see anything? No. Same thing with horses. They don't want you to know when one of them says, on 3, we all turn left. So the other thing is, horses that are injured try and hide that injury from the rest of the world. A predator always goes for the most vulnerable, somebody who looks injured. As I joke, hypochondriac horses died out long ago. So having a horse tell you that their foot hurts means that they are really hurt. There are very few wimps among horses. We need to listen to the horses and understand what they are trying to tell us because they're constantly speaking. We just have to listen. One thing that is kind of a pet peeve of mine is horses need to sleep as much as we do. Everybody says the old wives' tale, horses can sleep standing up. Yes, they can. I also learned that I can sleep while I'm in school, but it doesn't mean that you get deep, restful, restorative sleep standing up. It is true that they can sleep, but they cannot get restorative sleep. Most horses must lay down, and the only time they lay down is when they feel safe or are exhausted. Predators look for the horse that's laying down because those are the slowest to get up and go. Nearly every horse thinks of this when they're laying down. So they must really feel safe in order to get truly restorative sleep. And this all boils down to consistency and safety. Horses need consistency for their GI tract. We already went over that. And consistency is often a foundation for safety. But if the horse truly feels safe and every day is exactly the same, you're going to have a bored horse. So consistency is not necessarily optimal for a horse. The feeling of safety is the most essential ingredient for thriving. Any questions on any of that? I hope it was a review for most everybody. So let's get back to this social license thing. A few years ago, we used to say, oh yeah, that's just PETA, and we could ignore it. When somebody said, you know, you're hurting your horse, you're not paying attention, why does the horse have this on or that on? Now there is a whole discussion about animal rights versus animal welfare. As one person, it is in the news today that the country of Italy has decided to label horses as athletes so that they have the rights of an athlete. And that is huge, and it isn't going to happen in the US anytime soon. But you need to know these pressures are from around the world, and the United States is way behind. We're probably 10 years behind Europe as far as this social license to operate. One question that I have gotten in these is, are enslaved animals being used for human benefit? Talk about a fiery way to begin a discussion. That's one of those that you can't answer yes or no to. When they say that that others cannot tell you what you can do, you may be correct. Nobody can tell you what you must do. What they can tell you is what you cannot do. And I put the picture of the pony ride there because I can tell you in most parts of the US, pony rides are a thing of the past. If you think that social license to operate is a myth, ask the marine mammal industry. The Blackfish movie may have been greatly fictionalized for dramatic effect. They even said it was fiction. but it became reality to the public. And very rapidly, within a few years, there was no marine mammal show industry anymore. So whether it is reality or perception, people who know nothing about horses have an opinion, and they will voice that to their legislatures. Anybody remember greyhound racing? That's gone. Do you remember equestrian phase, the modern pentathlon in the Olympics? We're going to have that one more time in France, and then modern pentathlon will never again have horses. Could be a good thing. That's always debatable. But these are major changes that are happening or already happened. So what about social license to operate today? The education that how we were educated in this field is generally from a mentor. It's very difficult to learn about horses from a book or the internet. So the mentor teaches you what they did. And when you go out on your own, you do exactly what the mentor did. Too often, we don't ask whether what we were taught is proper or best. We know it as being normal. We are finding now that some things that we thought were normal to equestrians are actually horrifying to the naive public. We need to take a step back and look at ourselves. A dressage person would see this picture and go, okay, they have a full double, they're doing the higher levels. A naive person goes, look at all that leather and steel and chains. What are you doing to that poor thing? We need to look at ourselves from a different viewpoint, not what our mentor taught us, but what it looks like to the rest of the world. Why do I mention horse racing or rodeo or dressage in the same sentence as equine assisted services? The reason is because the public do not differentiate between how the horse is involved. To most uneducated people about horses, I mean, they could have PhDs, but they don't know about horses. People who don't know about horses really don't know the difference between dressage and rodeo and equine assisted services. We are all put in the same bucket. And it's really important that we understand that we have to help the entire equestrian industry, not just our own. So I've painted a fairly hopeless picture so far. What I want you to take home is how we together can turn this bleak future into a thriving future that continues to have horses in our lives in a way that are acceptable to everybody. Horses can still have a job, they can work daily, but they must be respected and valued. The public must feel that everyone associated with horses has the intention to care for them, empathize with them, and to look out for their best interest. That's a tall order, but that's what we must do. So what are the solutions? What can we do from here? There must be metrics about how a horse feels that are reproducible, consistent, and objective. There are many such metrics already studied. I'm going to travel to New Zealand with Pebbles and Molly next month for the International Society for Equitation Science Conference. That's where most of these metrics and studies will be discussed. There are lots of really good ones out there. One such metric by Sue Dyson, who's in the picture there, is the ethogram for pain scoring. It's a science-based system. It's based on 24 indicators, and I have the link there on the slide. These slides will be available on the HHRF website. So if I'm going too fast, too slow, if I don't keep you awake, you can always read these later. Maintaining the social license to operate requires far more than just well-researched metrics. Certainly, Horses and Humans Research Foundation is based on research. That's where the science comes from. The absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. That's pretty tricky words, but if you really think about it, so many people are saying, well, we don't have any proof. Just because you don't have proof doesn't mean it isn't happening. Social trust requires transparency of operations, establishment and communication of shared values, and demonstration of competence. These days, I think it's going to be fairly easy to make things transparent because everybody has a cell phone, everybody has a video. So we're going to have a lot more video availability. Communication and shared values, yeah, I think we're going to start doing that better. Demonstration of competence is where the equestrian world is really pushing back. The number of people who are what would be considered experienced horse people is really declining rapidly. And that's going to be a huge challenge. So these attributes can only be gained by taking an ethics-based, proactive, progressive, holistic approach to the protection of equine welfare. I don't know if anybody here is familiar with what's been going on in Europe lately with the television expose of the dressage barn. What it was a television company hired a working student to be hired, go in and videotape everything, including the training practices. And then she gave all the material to the television station who produced a documentary on the horrific training practices today. That was broadcast throughout Europe and has caused tremendous ramifications. My thought when I heard that was, could that happen here? You bet. If somebody was a volunteer at one of our therapy centers, videotaped, and then edited it just to show the bad parts, believe me, the same thing could be done here. So we need to know that could happen tomorrow. It could be going on right now. We need to work towards being ready for it. Social license to operate acceptance is won not by what is said, but what is being done. So certainly words are important, but what is happening out there is more important. So what is the solution? The first thing almost everybody says is educate. We have to educate the public so that they will understand. We will never be able to educate everybody. Too many people want to ignore the facts when making a decision. It seems to be very popular right now. But educate is the first thing on our list. Communicate. We need to be sure to communicate the positive things as much as the negative things. When you go online and look up pictures of horses, you'll get 10 pictures of horses doing bad things or people doing bad things to horses, and one of somebody doing something good. We have to be very proactive by putting the good things out there too. If you educate and communicate, you must prioritize welfare. Everybody needs to know, see, understand, perceive you as prioritizing welfare. In your talks with people, when you are teaching, when you are doing therapy, whenever you are around a horse, you need to discuss how the welfare of the horse is important and how you are thinking about it, doing it, making it better. We need to be proactive. Don't wait for somebody to come film your therapy center and say, gotcha. You want to be doing these things now, which put your center in a good light. You cannot be reactive. You must be proactive. And above all, be ethical. Don't tell them that you prioritize welfare and then not do it, because nothing speaks louder than somebody who is not ethical. So embrace change. This change that is coming is an evolution. We are not going to go backwards. This is a change that is coming. It is a wave. We are not going to be able to push it out of the way. We're going to need to do it. I put up this picture because it's from a television, just a snapshot of a therapeutic riding and vaulting center that was in the news. It is fabulous to get in the news, on the television, on social media, etc., promoting the good things. People need to feel that the horses are being prioritized. Their welfare is being prioritized. Make sure what you put out there portrays what you want it to. Always look at everything. I did not pick this picture because it has something bad in it. Don't worry, don't look for it. It's not in there. But too often I see things on social media where the horse is great, but in the background there's another horse bucking, or the person is all smiles, but the horse has so much leather on it you can't see their face. There are things you want to look at the entire picture, because somebody's going to crop it and only show the bad thing. Always make sure that the whole picture is what you want. The whole talk is what you want. The whole video is what you want. So when you are doing anything around the horses, don't ask, could I do this? Ask, should I do this? It's so. If you see something that you don't feel is proper, not in the best interest of the horses, or in any way could be misconceived. If you see something, say something. Most of us are very blinded by what we have always done. Help those around you to understand how the uneducated might perceive it. And believe me, I'll be out riding and somebody will say, you've got really, bad spurs on. And I'm going, yeah, but I never touched the horse with them. That was the last time I ever wore those. Even if I never, ever, ever touched the horse with the spurs, people perceived it as it was, and so just because we've always done something, help the person next to you understand how somebody else could see it. I have 6 things here that are intended to raise questions. And I'd really like from here it to be a discussion with everybody to think about these things. And I would love to have people in the webinar who can ask questions and tell us how these would relate to them. One of the current hot topics is, are the horses fit enough to do what we ask them to do? And many people feel that the horses they see, the reason why pony rides are gone is people said those horses were not fit enough to walk around in circles. Most horse people know that wasn't the case, but that was their number one complaint. And so the fitness of the horses needs to be proactively discussed. Are the horses treated as individuals or simply a cog in the wheel? People want to know that every horse is valued and treated as an individual. This is having a huge impact on things like polo, where they have a string of 6 that all look identical, or on jumping, where people often do catch riding and don't necessarily treat them as an individual. So the public wants to be sure that every horse is treated individually. The third question is, what about the other 23 hours a day? If a horse is only out for 1 hour a day, what is the rest of their life? Many people who don't know about horses go, they are put back in jail and they are not allowed to do anything the rest of the time. Most people don't realize that that's a safe place for the horse. Most horses like it, So it's an education. It's being proactive. It is doing research. All of these things have to be done about these questions. The fourth one that I'm commonly asked is, how are equine assisted services facilities accountable? How do you enforce adequate horse knowledge? Are you sure that all the volunteers know what's going on and how to be prioritizing horse welfare? These are questions that are being asked that we need to have the answers. How can we accurately and quickly assess physical or emotional stress? When a horse is working, how do we know that they're not in pain? How do we know that they're not emotionally distressed. These are things that we have to be able to tell somebody when they ask us that question. If a TV crew came to your therapy center tomorrow, stuck a microphone in your face and a camera saying, how do you know this horse is not in pain? You need to have an answer. It makes most everybody squirm in their seats because we don't have an answer. Most of us don't. And we need to, because we want to keep doing this. And the only way we can keep doing this is to show, to be proactive, to educate that we do have horse welfare as our primary goal. The last question that I get asked a lot is, how is the suitability of the saddle, of the bridle, of the blanket, of the shoeing, how are all those things assessed? How can you tell me that that saddle fits that horse? How can you tell me that that's the right bit, or that the horse even needs a bit? Why does he have a bit in when you're not even using the reins? These are questions that people are asking. And if nobody's asked you these questions yet, you're lucky, but they're going to. So it's really important to be ready.
So, Mike, we do have a few questions and comments, if I could jump in.
Oh, please read them.
The comments were about the need for being positive and in order for the survival of the industry and the appreciation for you putting this together. The Denise mentioned the book Compassionate Equestrian by Dr. Schoen and Gordon, that again, good positive proactive reinforcement. She also mentioned the Herd Institute and the recent EFP course had a model on ethics, not just for the clients, but for the horses. So they're teaching, it's beginning to become more prominent. And then the question was about what are the methods for assessing emotional fitness and well-being? And again, Denise mentioned that the horses in her program received Reiki treatments for stress.
Good.
So I so I guess the biggest question was, how are people assessing emotional wellness?
Okay. Let me do the next slide, and that'll answer a lot of those questions, but not all of them. I applaud the comment. Thank you so much for that, because there are a lot of people talking about this right now. And what I'm trying to say is that it is important for every single one of us, not just to go, oh, well, they're all studying it. We need to live it each day. We need to have answers ready. We need to be proactive. And you can go to a lot of seminars, you can go to a lot of courses. There are a lot of great things going on right now. But every single horse person has to live it, or else the public will find the one person who isn't. And we need to self-police ourselves and really work on that, because like the predator finding the one lame horse, they'll find the one person who's really doing the wrong thing and make sure the whole world sees it. So, was that all of the comments for the moment?
Well, I guess people looking for on the issue of physical and emotional wellness, of how is it measured now? How do we tell?
Okay. Let me skip to the next slide then and answer some of those, and then we'll come back to those questions.
Okay.
In 1994, David Mallour published The 5 Domains. And this was not specifically for horses, but it has been very, very well adapted for horses. These are the 5 areas that every horse requires. And if you can assess each of these variables, you will be able to see how to make the horse's life better and what needs improvement. And so you can look, the 2020 published paper is the latest one. Dr. Malore has done work on everything from chickens to giraffes and everything in between. And what he has found is the same things are important for most every one he studies. For example, nutrition is the first of the 5. It has to be adequate, appropriate, and available. And if nutrition is adequate, appropriate, and available, it's not a problem. And what horse people need to do is not just say, oh, well, it's adequate, et cetera. Think about what the horse needs from where the horse is coming from. They are a fermenting body. They need consistent roughage. When we say supplements, remember that a supplement is intended to supplement the roughage. Just lots of things about nutrition. And one other thing, this entire talk, every slide could be an entire course. This 5 domains, there is a fabulous course being taught right now. The HHRF website has how to sign up for it. But this is a college course that goes for 4 months, this one slide. So believe me, I am really condensing it. The physical environment is the second domain. How is the footing in the arena? How is the bedding in the stall? What is the temperature? What about light? Is there too much? Is there too little? What about noise? Are horses worried about what they're hearing out the window? How is the air quality? Things like, we usually think about the ammonia smell, but what about smoke from a fire? Should you be using the horse when there's smoke in the air? The physical environment is easy to measure, but hard to change. The third one is health. That is a huge one all by itself. Fitness, injuries, weight, disabilities, everything about health needs to be considered. Then we get into behavioral interactions. Most people look at the first 3, nutrition, physical environment, and health, and stop there. In order for a horse to thrive, they must have socializations. They must have what they call agency, which means make choices. They must have learning and exploration. These are things that we quite often forget about. And it is so important. I see so many horses that people ask me to come out and fix their horse, and I'm going, his lameness, his ulcers, his this, his that is due to the management. It's due to what you do beyond nutrition, physical environment, and health. these are the things that you really need to look at and think about. And the first four, once you have thought about all those and everything else, they really boil down to the fifth one. The sum of the first four is the fifth one. Does the horse feel safe? And that is from consistency, expectations, sleep, boredom, the lack of helplessness. The mental state of the horse actually really, really impacts health. And the more research we do into the health of racehorses, the health of performance horses, the health of all these different horses, we find the variable that we often need to research is the mental state. Because if a horse is thriving mentally, they very rarely have physical issues.
So there are some more questions.
Okay.
One comment was, well, one question was about too many riders, and so allowing the horse to be used for a short period of time for a competition, fairly easy and low key, but was used several times in a row, the same horse, because another horse had become lame, and then people complaining that the horse was overworked.
And believe me, that is something that is regulated because people perceive it as you shouldn't do that. And you know as well as I do, a lot of these horses could go in 5 classes a day and never be overworked, but that is not the public perception. And so we, as an industry, need to really work to educate people to what is acceptable to a horse. Most horses would prefer to be out 5 times a day than just once. So this is part of the education and the communication that we have to do. Next one.
It was about being respectful of how do we help others to learn how to be respectful. And this issue was about in some of the programs they might do painting things on the horse's sides. And is that how might that be addressed? And is it respectful? Is it a part? And that's a tough one because some of the horses might mind it and other horses don't mind it.
And believe me, I know one horse that if she had 5 little kids around her petting her with paintbrushes all day, she would just be in heaven. And other ones, get me out of here. So that is where the individualistic properties of the horse must be considered. And I think that if we were proactive to show, invite a TV crew to come see you painting on the horse and explain to them how that horse loves to have all the kids massaging her all day. That's, explain to them the positive aspects.
Yeah. Nancy asked a question about EAS organizations working on very small acreage, often with much of that acreage dedicated to arenas and barns. Are there things these programs to do to increase the well-being of their horses, or should the acreage be a significant deterrent of the number of, or determinant of the number of horses and therefore program capacity?
Well, you are asking about an evolution that we are not going to change 40 years ago, everybody had 2 horses in the backyard. Now, down the road from me is a barn with 1,000 horses, and nobody has a horse in the backyard. We are concentrating our horses more and more and more. It's a bad thing, it's a good thing. Is the center limited by the acreage? I would have to say that if your horses are happy and healthy, you're fine. If they're starting to have problems, you've got a problem. And every center is very individual, but yes, capacity is limited by acreage.
Okay, the next one is pretty good, maybe a good conversation. It's about the 5 domains are easy to describe and difficult to assess. Most language is descriptive, but does not address the impact on the horse. Is there causation or coincidence in the state of the domain and the health and well-being of the horse? And then one of the responses is that social license to operate key is to learn to respond in ways that explain the methodology used to make the decisions in ways that put compassion and welfare first. We really have to listen first and respond in ways that are open and educational.
That person should be teaching the course. That is a fabulous answer. That I couldn't have said it better. So thank you, whoever did that. That is exactly correct. Equestrianism is an art. It's not a science. We use science to help us improve our art. And even what is correct or right is often debated. But the more science, the more research we have, the more old wives' tales get thrown out. And we are getting better and better, but we have a long ways to go.
That's
Mike, we're at 8:05 Eastern time. So I don't know if you have a last statement to kind of conclude things, and then, but if you want to stay on and answer some more questions, that's fine too. I just want to be respectful of the fact that people signed up for an hour webinar.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. I hope that you see light at the end of the tunnel. This is coming. If we are ready for it, it will be a good thing. Be proactive, be ethical, be communicative, and things will work out well. Just know that this is coming, and if we work together, we can make it a good thing. So thanks everybody for being on.
Thank you
we did have Nancy snuck a question in there. Why do we choose why does HHRF choose well-being instead of welfare for our committee, and how do we get more research? just to leave it with a cliffhanger.
Yes. Welfare is what we do. Well-being is what the horse is. And our goal is well-being, and how we get there is welfare. So well-being is our goal rather than welfare. How do we get more research? Really, the way we get more research is to have more donations so that there's more money, because without money, there's no research. So the only way we can have science behind our answers is to get more donations, more money, more research. But I'll stay on if anybody has any other questions. And the hour is up, so I appreciate everybody being on this evening.
Well, thank you. That's all the questions in the chat, and that was perfect.
Thank you, Mike.
Do you want to stay on and take more questions, or would you rather us like end it here?
Oh, that's up to the powers that be.
Thank you. I'm glad I found this group. I'm leaving now, but thank you.
Thanks. I have a question, but I can wait until another time or send it through email if y'all are in a hurry to get off. I know it's later for y'all than it is for me.
What's the question?
Well, I think, I don't know if it's a question or a whole question. It's probably like a whole bunch of different questions. But so I feel like at our agency as a nonprofit, we do a lot of all of the things that you've talked about. Like we are very much for that and try to work very diligently to care for our horses. But sometimes there are other organizations who look at that as excessive use of nonprofit funds. And I don't know that it's a question and that we're going to have an answer to it, but just perhaps something to put out there that as you are doing research or are doing science or, you know, talking about things, materials that we can put out, that to provide horses individualized care and to pay them like the highest, or to feed them the highest quality feed and to give them the highest grass and the best of everything that they need is not going to be cheap. But there's this perception that because we're nonprofits that sometimes we need to cut corners in those sorts of expenses. And so I just didn't know if there were any other organizations that were nonprofits that have faced that, or if it's just something kind of that we're facing. Or
I think that many nonprofits face that. I feel the being proactive and saying how, yes, we need your donation. However, whether you donate or not, we are going to treat these horses in the best way possible. We do not cut corners. That is the message that needs to be sent.
I totally agree. And that is what we do and what we say, and we don't apologize for it. I just, sometimes though, it comes back to maybe just the perception, you know, so it's like the opposite perception is like, sometimes you feel like, well, if you don't do the very best, you can be criticized, but sometimes you're also criticized for doing the very best. I would choose to be criticized for doing the very best, but just if other organizations have ever struggled with that, or if y'all have seen that in any of the research or in any of the materials or things that you create up, I just wanted to let you know that that's something that sometimes nonprofits face.
Yeah. Nancy, I see your hands up.
Yes, I'm also a center director, so I'm happy to respond. One of the things when I took the present position, and I apologize for the knowing in the background, it's a dog with a bone, was we radically increased the care standards. And we did that really by educating and making a comparison of buying better tack was the same as not asking someone to run a marathon in somebody else's shoes or cheap shoes from, Dollar Tree.
Right.
And so really trying to make it personal and educating people all the time. We put up information that's in an area that, visitors, parents, volunteers see on HHRF. We use that standard for from the horse's perspective. And very much like you can't keep a good employee without a really good benefit package. You can't expect people to work for nothing. We've really worked to use that metaphor because most people can understand that. Even though we all have volunteers, they have to get something from the relationship. And we talk about turnover is very expensive, especially with where the horse world is at the moment. but working on a social media campaign and an education campaign and educating volunteers so that that's really worked very, very well for us, even though our expenses went up on one line item, they went down in others
And another,
because our horse care improved.
yeah. So if there's ever anything that y'all create that we could, I guess all of the nonprofits could share, anytime you can share something on social media or share information from a very well-known and respected organization like y'all, that helps us to be able to justify that. So thank you for holding this and for doing this, because I feel like it helps us make a better case for better care for our horses. So thank you.
Good. Good, Joanne.
Got your hand up too.
I just wanted to say that we also run a horse center, an EAS center, as well as a horse rescue. And we really went the route that Mike was talking about. And we collected data, and we were able to show our board and our people that by doing the better care, our horses had longer longevity. Our feed costs, by buying better feed, our feed costs dropped because we didn't have to feed as much of it. Same with the hay. So I think if you're a little proactive with and do some data collecting, you're going to find that it's really easy to show people why it's so important to do it the right way.
Yeah.
The other thing is that the research actually shows that a happy, relaxed, well horse performs better, lives longer, has less illnesses and problems. So there is a lot of research about why you want a happy horse. Even the high performance horses do better. And I've gotten to the point where watching horses come into a class last weekend in Wellington, and I could say that horse is going to be in the top 5 because I can just tell by the way the horse looks and the rider looks. They're happy, they're relaxed, they're engaged. And darn if I wasn't right 90% of the time.
Yeah, no, I always make the point that a happy horse is going to be a safe horse. And the last thing that we would want to do is to have someone riding a horse that was unsafe. So it comes down to liability and safety as well. So, well, thank you so much. I really appreciated this.
Thank you, everyone, for being on. If there is anything else, please feel free to email HHRF and we'll get you answers, and look forward to seeing you at the next webinar.